Hi guys, I'm Kevin Tharp, and I am the professor of Search Engine Optimization course at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. Today we're having our first Fireside chat on SEO with Alison Anderson from Thomson Reuters. And if you'll go ahead and introduce yourself, Alison, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Alison Anderson. I am currently the manager of our digital marketing analytics team here at Thomson Reuters. More specifically, I work in our FindLaw organization, which specifically services attorneys and lawyers, law firms throughout the U.S. We focus on their digital marketing services, creating awareness, engagement, and connections for them out in the legal marketplace.
All right, so today we're talking about Onsite. Haven't taught this class for half dozen years now. To me, Onsite is probably the most important single element. If you're only going to look at one element and the places that you can affect, it would be in the Onsite, which means that there is just a ton of things that we can look at. One of the things that we use in the class is the SEO success factors, the thing that looks like a chemical chart that has all the different things. What is it? Search engine land. I could bring it up here, but excuse me. So that's one of the tools that we use. The SEO success factors is what it's called. And what that does is it breaks it down into on-site and off-site. And then within the on-site, it's got factors like areas of factors like content, architecture, and HTML. And there's different tools out there that will allow us to measure all these different things. And every time we have this class, every semester, every year, those factors actually change. They're changing slower now than they used to, but there's been a whole progression of changes in what those factors are from back in the mid-90s when search engines first sort of started until today, where they've got a lot more sophisticated. So what I wanted to start the conversation with Alison about is what's sort of going on right now, and then maybe we'll go to how do we get here and where do we think it's going from here. So we'll just throw that out to what are sort of the hot topics right now or things that they should definitely be looking at.
Okay, so I actually focused on 6 different areas here, which I'll kind of cover some of them, and then we can go back and talk about different parts of each of the 6. But the first one of the big things that's going on currently with Onsite is mobile first. So although this isn't a surprise to the marketplace, you know, what we're all used to using like our phones the majority of the time. But we're finally at the tipping point where mobile and tablet is generally more used than desktop. So we've, even in the analytics side of things, it's over 50%. You know, we're getting up to where less. I think we just pulled stats where it was like even internally here in the legal industry, over 55% of our legal consumers are using their phones instead of desktop. So that changes things. We used to be, you know, very focused on doing optimization for desktop, where now this whole shift is really concentrating all of our focus on mobile. So that's a really big one. So that's the number one that I have. Number 2 is security. So going over to HTTPS. So a lot of sites currently just have their HTTP without it being secured. Google's actually putting a huge emphasis on having your website secured in 2018. They're actually going to be doing a Chrome launch in July of 2018 that basically will flag your site if it's not secure. So if you land on any website that's not secure, probably sometime in July, you'll get a big notice that says, you know, do you want to continue onto the site? It's not secure. So they're really trying to get on top of you know, people feeling comfortable with being able to browse the web, you know, put in their personal information and having it be secure. So that's another huge emphasis that's happening currently. Another thing is user experience and engagement. So over the years, search engines had put a lot of emphasis on like content and links and that type of thing. It's still important, but how a person uses the site and their experience that they're getting is actually a huge weight when Google's looking at, how to return what sites to return when you're searching. So user experience and engagement are huge. There's a lot of different KPIs that go into play with that. That they can see, page speed being one, that type of thing. If your site is mobile friendly, they can see all that stuff to see if they would have a good user experience when they land. There's also specifically, I mentioned mobile, but even more specifically is AMP, which are accelerated mobile pages. You can build your site out with AMP code to basically make it faster and more user friendly for someone who's using a mobile phone. And then, so that's the third one. And then the fourth one is artificial intelligence. So yes, this is kind of a buzzword across, multiple industries, but it does apply directly to digital marketing. The three buckets that this kind of falls into is data analysis and user behavior. So we're tracking kind of across platforms and seeing how people are using things. I'll go a little bit more into specific on Facebook Pixel, which may also be covered in the social piece, but that is a big factor when on-site and tracking and using machine learning. We also have voice search. This is pretty big and also goes in under the artificial intelligence bucket. And then also things like chatbots. That's something else that's getting pretty big that people are utilizing on the web, and again, kind of going with that artificial intelligence machine learning. So chatbots are also pretty big. And then the fifth one, so those all kind of fall under the artificial intelligence machine learning. And then we also have progressive web apps, which I was telling Kevin right before this chat that we're having, I was sitting down with our manager of our digital marketing experts, Joe Wolepski, his name is, and I got a ton of awesome information from him as well to help talk with you guys about, because even progressive web apps is something it's fairly new. Google's kind of starting to just talk about it now. They really want to shift away from the way we've done apps in the past and really push people forward with using the progressive web apps instead of building them out how they have in the past. So we can go into detail with that a little bit more, but I even myself found out a lot more information about progressive web apps today. And then the last one, which is really cool, is tools and integration. So the way we used to look at on-site years ago, we didn't have a lot of tools that would give us a lot of really good insight to what we needed to do. Today we do. Google has things like Search Console, their Google Analytics tool continues to evolve. They also are giving us page speed tools, mobile friendly tools, ways that we can just easily crawl our websites to see what can I do to make my site perform better in the search engines? What can I do that will make people actually want to visit my site, make it more user friendly, that type of thing. When you crawl your site and if you see that your page, load times are super high, Google's going to tell you your site is really, really scoring low for this. Like, you need to make these improvements, and they specifically list them out of things you need to do to make your website better. So it's pretty cool, the tools and integration that's kind of happening today and the things we're getting more visibility to, which I think will only get better and better as we move into the future. So those are kind of the big, high-level 6 buckets, I guess, that I came up with of things that are happening today, things that are kind of going on in our marketplace.
Yeah, and as I was listening to those and taking notes, the thing that came across my head is that the technologies that are rolling out are now the driving factor, whereas before it was always, what is your desktop browser? That was the driving factor in on-site SEO. You used to design to a certain pixel size, and then as there were different size screens, responsive design came in, and then it went to mobile first, which is like, that's the king now. And so yeah, like you said, most people are browsing with their phones now. Everybody I mean, even my parents I was surprised. I brought bought my mom and dad an Echo, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go down and set this up on my phone so that they can use it. I got down there and I found out that my dad was using his phone and he was using Amazon Prime. I was like, my dad is the one that was like, I'm never going to use this technology. I don't need a computer. And now he's right in there with the rest of them. And he's in his 70s. And so it's like he's using this technology. You know that it's made its way all the way up. When my dad is using technology the same way that a teenager is, it's like, okay, this stuff is, well, maybe not the same way, but the same base sort of technologies. So one of the things that it's been in the last year, it's your second point there, is the security in the HTTPS. You said that they're going to start flagging and not showing results that aren't HTTPS or warning about them?
Yes, they'll have a warning. They actually in a blog, it's like Chromium, blog.chromium.org. They have a really good article about, and it shows different image shots of what it will look like. But up in your browser, like if you do even continue, it'll say not secure, like it'll have like a big warning. So you can continue onto the site, but Google's really trying to do a push to get everybody over into the secure land and not to be in the HTTP anymore. And the fact that they're even going to display it in their browser just, shows like how important that is. And if anybody wants to compete, right, and like they're even like within our legal industry, we're pushing right now. We are trying our hardest to get all of our sites moved off of HTTP. And all of our enterprise sites that we have are going through the final migration. We've moved most of them, but there's one left that we're pushing even this month. So we're really trying to get ready for the July update and get everything off of HTTP and moved over. It's kind of lit a fire under everyone's tushies.
Yeah, this is actually an area where I have resisted. The sites that I have don't gather information. I don't gather information at all. So I thought it really isn't that important for me to go to HTTPS. And part of the reason that I didn't want to is because of the cost. It's like you've got to pay that annual cost. And I know that there are ways around where you can sort of come in the back door and get a free security certificate and put it in. But it was just having to go through that juggle. But if people go to their browsers right now, if they look in the address bar, there's already a notification there. It's either like a green lock that's closed or a red lock that's open. Depending on your browser, it may be a little bit different. But over there before the HTTP or the HTTPS, there's an icon that shows up in there that will already show you if it is a secure site or not. And so you say that that's actually going to be moved into the browser window. Is that what I understood?
Yes, that's what it looks like. I'm even just trying to pull up a screenshot. It'll have like a big exclamation point, it almost looks like, and then it'll say not secure right next to the web address.
Okay, which is automatically going to scare off anybody who, it's like, wait a minute, because there's so much security stuff now.
Right.
That's such a part of our society now, the way that security and lack of security has come into all this.
Right, and Google too. So we have access to a lot of Search Console. We have close to 15,000 sites or something, say like within our Google Webmaster Tools accounts that we're constantly monitoring and seeing how things are. Google will send messages in there too, kind of alerting you when they find different things. And there's been messages that they'll send when like they see like hacked content, or if it looks like there's malware found or whatever it is. They try to get on top of it and send you like a message about it to say, hey, we saw this, something's fishy, something's coming into your site. And then they tell you like, potentially how to like fix it or what you need to dig into. But even for the last couple of years, we've been getting a lot of those messages. Like if Google is even sensing something like that you're being hacked, they, will automatically send this message. And sometimes it is based off of like these weird things coming into the site, or somehow somebody got, into your site, hacked it, and is now auto-generating content off of like a subdomain or something. There's crazy stuff that we've seen. But Google has been at least trying to get on top of like telling people about it for the last couple years. But now it's like you got to get your site, secure, because they're trying to get ahead of like this stuff shouldn't continue to happen. And I'm sure maybe they've seen a significant increase like high level, that a lot of the hacked stuff and like malware and all this stuff is, spam is another huge one that is becoming more common. And so they want people to at least have their site secure, just to get away from having those concerns.
Well, and I don't know, seems like it must tie into this whole fake news and the manipulation of our internet and social media and all that, whatever is happening out there, and we don't know exactly, I don't know exactly what's happening, but we know that there's something happening out there. I wonder if that's not tied into that in some way, because that's what some areas are pointing to the Googles and the Facebooks and saying, hey, this happened on your platform. It's your responsibility to take care of that. And they're trying to respond, but this stuff changes so quickly that it's like, what do you do next? And especially if you're a small time, operator, not a search engine, not a Thomson Reuters, but maybe you have a little blog or a website that you may or may not be trying to monetize. It's like, how do you stay in front of this? And so the Google Search Console is a way where Google can send you messages and say, hey, we see something going on your site. You probably ought to fix it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it is to that point too. I mean, if you just have, it's nice when you have more visibility to how things are happening on a larger scale. But I mean, you bring up a great point that some of these, solo businesses, they just have one store, they may just have one website, right? Like they don't see it high level. They don't really get the impact that this stuff is going to have to them. Where some, with managing, 15,000 sites, we have more visibility to all this stuff that could potentially happen. And even though it happened on one, we're making sure it doesn't happen on the rest of them. But if you just manage one site, which is, depending on what businesses and stuff that the class is analyzing, this is really good information that could be surfaced to to those businesses as well.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's the people that are least likely to know about it, and they're also happen to be the ones that are most likely to get hacked, because they know that those kinds of sites don't have people, a staff that can do nothing but pay attention to this kind of stuff. So it really makes them vulnerable.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next thing, accelerated mobile pages. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the accelerated mobile pages. So AMP, is for short in the acronym. It's not necessarily new, but it is something that's becoming more important. Just like I said, as we go to the mobile first world, it's a way that you can set up your coding in the back end to basically be more mobile friendly. And so I'd actually even just watched like a video on this the other day. But they start kind of talking about like why AMP, why would we need to do that? And at this, it was I can't remember the name of the guy, but he was from Google giving the video, and he was saying, like 75% of mobile sites take 10 plus seconds to load. And they know that 53% of mobile site visitors leave after 3 seconds. That's how impatient we are. Yeah. If it takes more than 3 seconds for the site to load, they're gone. You can pretty much consider that you'll lose them. And then there's another stat that he gave on 2 times more mobile ad revenue for sites that load in 5 seconds versus 10 or 19 seconds. So if you even have people doing like AdSense and stuff like that on your site, you are going to lose money if you don't have a site that can, render and load fast enough to even keep, the audience that you're trying to capture. So we've actually put a lot of, priority and emphasis on load time in our company, just saying like, we basically set a rule that's like anything less than 3 seconds or anything more than 3 seconds is not acceptable. Right. So we even run our sites through like a load time tool that will then tell us like how much on average every site is loading. So 3 seconds now is usually typically what you should be shooting for. Mm-hmm. The Google page speed tool will tell you, you can put it into the tool and see kind of how the site is responding mobile. It'll give you the mobile and the desktop, but it's just something to pay attention to, see how long the site takes to load. I mean, 53% will leave after 3 seconds. That's a lot. You can pretty much just, even if you get, 100 visitors a month, that's 50 of your visitors leaving. They're not even going to wait for it to load, which is just automatic.
And that's people who you've already grabbed. They've already clicked on your site. So that is people who have already made that psychological connection to you, or at least to see what you're about. So you've lost 50% of the people who've already committed to checking you out. So it's not 50% of the people who saw you in a search engine results page, but it's 50% of the people who made the decision to act on your link, and that's huge. Right. One of the tools that we use that I share with my classes that leverages the Google page speed but gives you a higher visibility is called GT Metrics, and we're always looking for the free tools, tools that the people can come and they can use without having to buy a license. Excuse me, even if they can only examine a small part. But one of the things that it does, it even includes a video that lets you see on a timeline how your page renders over the seconds, but it breaks it down to each individual element on the page, what order they load in and how long it takes. So it can really give you visibility. Like some of the people won't resize an image or optimize an image, and they'll have an image that's this big, that's displaying that big on the page. Well, this may take 6 seconds to load, whereas if they had it down here, it would take a few microseconds. And it's like, you've got to do those basic design principles now because, people are going to get up and leave.
Yeah, images are actually, to that point too, images are usually most commonly what we see. The people aren't optimizing their images, and so we usually see that too. That's a very common result, that when your load time is extremely long because of, and usually it's like all these images, like these need to be optimized, because just your point, you can have this huge file size like attached to it. You may just be doing it like having like a little like image or something that you don't need the file size to be that big. You can compress it. So.
And that's one of the really easy things that people can fix when they're doing their on-site optimization is look at the page speed, look and see what these tools are telling you about how long those images, because like you say, almost every site that I've ever audited, if it hasn't got somebody who really knows what they're doing, it's telling you that the images can be optimized, resized. There's a series of things that they can do. And that's the easiest thing for most people who do start trying to do their on-site. That's the easiest thing that they can fix, is to fix that download page speed. And that helps in a lot of places. It helps for your mobile user. It helps to show up in the search engine results pages. And I'm not 100% positive, but it seems to me that I read something about where if you had some really bad images, Google may actually optimize them for you, or send a different image, not a different image, but a different version of the image than you had originally done, if it's just too big. I haven't seen anything about that recently, but that's where it's getting to, is it's like, you're not good enough at designing your site, so we're going to adjust it.
We're going to do it for you.
We're going to do it for you. And it's like, that's what you want, is you want a company like Google deciding how to revise your page because you can't do it well.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen the auto, adjustment of images, but I would not be surprised.
No, I'd be more surprised if they didn't do it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So artificial intelligence. Now, talk about looking forward. Where do you want to go first with this one?
I know this one. Yeah, this one could go to a lot of different places. So I have a few different things just that kind of fall under the artificial intelligence bucket, that kind of machine learning. One of the cool things, which I said maybe also mentioned by the social kind of media side of this class too, but the whole data analysis and user behavior. So we're getting smarter at tracking across channels. Internally. So if you as somebody who's managing your marketing campaign or just, what all your digital marketing efforts online, we do here at Thompson and FindLaw, we do manage like an attorney or law firm's like entire marketing portfolio online if they want us to. It's one of the services that we will do for them. So we have the opportunity, because we're monitoring all of that, we have the opportunity to put on tracking code that ties back, that helps us with attribution, that will kind of connect the dots between, like, if they were on our directory ad, if they went to PPC, if they went to the social media, if they went to their website, if they went across all these channels, it's tracking like a user. And so the data analysis and user behavior there is like incredible when you can actually see from, like, if you're looking at me, like in my unique number, to see that I went here, I went here, I went here, and then I converted here. So it's really kind of painting the full picture of attribution, which is cool that we can start doing that now. Also a little scary. But Facebook has a Facebook pixel that we're actually doing a lot with today internally, on where we can put that tracking code on a lot of our different stuff and start targeting, using like real-time targeting to start adjusting our ads based off of what a user is doing. It has to do with a lot of like retargeting and using like our own, like, or using the Google or Facebook's algorithms, and like they are trying to like improve our success in the ads. And so it's using all of this, real-time information. And when you think of all the personal information that you have on Facebook and the way that they're able to track you across different things once you've been there, really, really good if you're into like digital marketing analytics. A little scary if you're not, to know that they're actually tracking all that stuff you're doing. But it does help us and helps us, optimize our like ad campaigns and making sure that we're serving our ads to, the people that we want to see it.
Okay, so anytime that we start talking to people who don't know how this stuff works, and they start getting a glimpse kind of behind the curtain at how it all works, there's always that stage of, oh my gosh, is this cool or is this creepy? Because they really can track to a real, they can really identify, maybe not necessarily down to the individual, but they can track you to, this is what you use, and then they'll send ads to you based upon whatever. So if you do a search for canning jars, and then you go to another platform a minute later and you see an ad for canning jars or pickle spices or anything, that's them taking the information that you provided, a search, just some piece of data somewhere, and they've somehow associated that to you and then you to other platforms. So there's all these data points, and they're able to tie them all together, and that's how they're able to market to you. And what it means is that they're able to present some really good targeted marketing to you. And whether you think that's cool or creepy, it is what it is. Now, let me ask a question. I don't have a lot of experience with the Facebook pixel, but let me take a shot at what I think this means, and if you understand the technical of how it works, you can correct me or tell me I'm in the right general direction. But doesn't that originate with like a paid search on Facebook or one of their platforms? And what it does is it loads a pixel into your browser essentially, and then it then associates you with some kind of a tracking system, and that pixel is what's used to sort of follow you around, or actually the data associated with that pixel is what is able to follow you around. So it'll go and it'll see that, okay, he just clicked on a ad for pickle jars. We know that he likes pickle jars. We then see him on another platform. We know he likes pickle jars, and so we're going to start marketing related services to him because we know his interest.
Yes, that's exactly right. And we've actually done some. So you can also do like retargeting with it, which is extremely useful. So like if I know that, like, say these 5 people clicked on my ad and I know they're interested in it and I know they visited these other places, I can then retarget with an even more specific ad that reaches out to you knowing that you're interested in the first place. Because you can, I mean, it really gets targeted. Like now, instead of, 100 people say that, like, you're just trying to get like your ad impression on, right, to just like see it. Now I know that, say these 10 people clicked on it. Now I'm going to specifically give them a certain message that I want them to see.
And then
even exactly. I know in some cases we had someone internally run a pilot or a scary test that they specifically targeted like a person, and so like in the ad it was kind of like hi, like saying hi to like the person, like specifically their name, just to see if it would work, and it did, and it scared the person that we were doing it to.
So I recently heard that because of some of the stuff that happened with the elections and all that, or the fake news, that they had taken back, or they backed off on that ability to get that specific in your targeting. Now I don't know that, I haven't read it. I just talked to another marketer that said that it wasn't as easy, because I was wanting to target people with certain degrees from certain schools, and they said we can't do that anymore. So they're getting more protective. There was kind of an uproar over how targeted you could get to the individual level. So yeah, they are pulling back, definitely on Facebook now. I'm trying to think. I don't even, because I know the way too that they were able to specifically target someone was a lot of these, like they had to meet this criteria, and it was very, very specific, where then like there was only like a few people that would actually even qualify for. Right.
So you can do it that way, but yeah, you're right. They are being more protective about that, because people were not happy on how specific they could get down to with us.
Because that was always sort of the argument, is that you weren't targeting a person, you were targeting a set of interests.
Right.
But if you could get specific enough in those set of interests, you could get it to a person or a very small group of people.
Right.
Which from a marketer standpoint is really cool. From a consumer standpoint, that really does start getting kind of spooky.
Right. I mean, when you think of, because obviously you can pick and choose like how much information you want to share on social media and that type of thing, but when people don't understand like their privacy guidelines, or what, they will and will not, kind of give them. I mean, there's a lot of different options that they're trying to give people, but if you signed up for Facebook a long time ago and you haven't adjusted any of those, privacy settings, and you really haven't adjusted anything, they have access to a lot of information. I mean, and even now, like you can give them, it's everything with just like your hobbies and the things that you like and the things that you don't like. I mean, yeah, they can see all that information. It's a lot of personal information in there. They
do. I embraced it several years ago. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to try and, to hide. I'm not going to use, all those tools and everything. I'm going to go in and I'm going to play. And it's amazing how well some of these groups can target you. And I would use Amazon as perhaps the best example for me. I've actually had times where I went and bought a book, and they were able to predict from my reading pattern how long it was going to take me to read that book. And then what they would do is, after the 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, they would target me with the next book in that series. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's cool. It's scary. I don't know which to do.
Right. They actually too, I don't know if you've heard of this, Kevin. I just had a few people bring this up to me the other day, and I was like, I need to dig more into that. But they were saying even like you could have your phone like sitting next to you, and if you're logged into like Facebook or whatever, like in the app, and if you hadn't like turned off the microphone, and there's all these different things that like you allow your apps to have access to, that they were saying that when they were doing, there was some article or something about it too, but saying that like, so they were talking about, say, like a purse or something. They were together with a bunch of women together. They were all talking about a specific purse. The woman was like, I never searched the purse on my phone. I just talked about it. And then like the next day she started getting these ads for this purse that she's like, I never did a search on my phone, like, 'cause she was like, I could get that like maybe they'd look at my search history and that type of thing. And then she kind of looked through her settings and realized that like Facebook had access to the microphone on her phone, which I think is just a normal setting. But then she realized that, well, it must have like listened to that, heard some sort of voice recognition for whatever, and then started serving her these purse ads. So I was like, oh, I need to look into that a little bit more, but I thought that was interesting.
I had a similar kind of experience a couple years ago, and I was never able to follow up with it, but I was looking at, when I was setting up my virtual reality lab, I was looking at getting a security system, a set of cameras that would record da-da-da-da-da. And I went into a Sam's, and I took pictures with my phone of the systems, and probably the tag that had the name of the system. And when I got home, there was an ad for that system on my Facebook or whatever. It's like I had never done a search for it. It was when I was first starting it. So I can't prove that they did a image recognition and were able to tie that back. But I did try to do some research, and they're able to get enough information out of those images that it's plausible that they may have used my pictures. Now, that said, my camera is set to automatically sync the pictures up to my Google account. So, so it's not like they were coming to my phone. It was like I was pushing the information. So I don't know how far it goes, but it's certainly in the realm of something that could be believed, no doubt.
Yeah, I do the same thing where I have my images pushed out. So I think, there's got to be something there. But yeah, so the voice, the microphone, and that type of thing. I mean, and that even, which also kind of goes nicely into the next kind of thing under the bucket of artificial intelligence, but is voice search. So that is becoming something that is going to be more and more common as we move forward, especially with mobile devices. So, I mean, even while I'm at home now, I still kind of tend to just automatically type in like my searches or what I'm looking for. But my husband doesn't type in anything. I don't even know the last time he's typed in anything. I know everything he's searching because it's always with the click and the voice. Yep. So he constantly is doing the voice searches and asking questions and, and he's never had issues with it not delivering the right information. I am starting to kind of get into it, but I'm so used to just typing it in and even being at work and stuff that most of the time I don't, but at home I am getting to actually use more of the voice search. And we do at our home, we have an Alexa and we use her and we ask her stuff, and both my kids think it's super fun to ask Alexa questions and to see what she comes up with, and asking her to play music and stuff. But It's becoming more common and more people are having those types of devices, and it doesn't always have to be an Alexa. I mean, like I said, like it can be, just a voice search on your phone. If you think of even in your car, like most, newer cars will have like the voice recognition with things you're asking the car to do, and that's voice search. So I think a lot of times people, associate voice search with just like the Alexa or the the iHome and all that stuff, but it's not, it's more. And they're getting smarter at what we're searching for with our voices and returning, more accurate information. So they used to be, I was reading some stat too about voice search when it was like 2014, they were like, not 80% accurate on like what we were trying to do, and now they're over 95% accurate of every time we would expect something, that they're on the mark, that they're actually delivering what we want to see. So that's another huge part with machine learning. That's
one of the things that I've noticed. I was talking about the SEO success factors at the beginning of this, and one of the things that has now become a success factor is answering questions. And that's because the way that you do a query with voice is different than the way that we used to type in the keywords. So, we ask them questions. Where is a restaurant near me, or what's the best flour to use with sourdough bread, or whatever it is, whatever question comes to our mind, we ask it in the form of a question. Whereas queries before, they were queries, but they weren't phrased like questions. So now it's to the point where, as a content author, it's in my best interest to know how people are going to ask questions about whatever it is that I'm trying to put in front of them, and then provide that information as a question and answer. So that's one of the new things that's changed on the SEO success factors, is in the content, answering questions. And that's one of the newer things. Like I said, it's pretty much stabilizing what they call the success factors, but that's one of the ones that's changed in the most recent version of that.
Right.
Along similar lines, I gave my mother, she's got Alzheimer's. I gave her a Alexa. Actually, I gave it to my mom and dad so that she could ask those questions that she asked over and over and over without asking them to my dad, so that it kind of gave him a break and gave her, what time is it? What's the date? I think I must have said the word. I just heard a ring in the background. So I think my Alexa's calling me. Actually, I really do think that it is. Oh,
that's funny.
That's funny. My mom and dad are calling me on the Alexa right this very instant. I'm going to have to hang that up. So that's the other thing, is that ability for her to call me. So
right.
She calls me all the time, because all she has to do is say, Alexa, call Kevin. And as you saw, it can come right to my phone or to my Alexa or whatever. And so for her, that's been a great thing. That ability to not have to pick up a phone and just interact with the technology to talk to me or whoever. And so that's one of those tangents that I go on. But that's one of the really cool things that this technology does allow. It's not all creepy. Some of it is really cool.
Right.
So you used a term earlier that I'm not up on at all, but I think I know what it is, and that's progressive web apps.
Yes.
Can I give this a shot, and then you can tell me if I think I'm close?
Yeah.
Back in the browser war days, there was no standard for HTML. And so there were different versions of HTML. So Internet Explorer used a different one than Netscape did. And in the early days, we would have to actually design several different versions of the same web page so that they could be viewed by the different browsers. I've seen a parallel with apps, where instead of using a web app, which uses a standard that works for all platforms, they've been iOS apps and Android apps and whatever else. And my guess is that progressive web apps is the same thing as what happened at the end of the browser wars, which is we've got a standard here. use that standard for whatever platform, and then you don't have to make 2 apps, you only have to make 1. So is that what we're looking at?
Yes, it is. That was part of the conversation that I had with the manager of our digital marketing experts, and he also kind of he is super technical. Like, he knows he can get into the details where he could have a conversation, or he could talk for probably like 20 minutes and use like only digital marketing lingo that no one would understand. But so I kind of tend to be like, could you dumb it down for me? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
So he kind of had a bunch of different things that he was explaining this in, but how you explained it, I think was really well and easy to understand. He also said the reliability is another big one. So Google is actually, so you can be, and not like this happens that often, but you can use the app on or off network. So it's one of those things where it will load a certain amount of what it, can on your phone, and it'll update whenever you're back on the network. But it's starting to respond quicker based on if you're on or off of network regardless. So it can start loading a bunch of stuff. And then even like if you're not on, and then, as soon as that like kicks in, then it can become more faster. So he had said like reliability is a huge one, loading instantly, even in uncertain network conditions, fast. It's supposed to respond quicker to user interactions. And then it's supposed to be more engaging, so it's supposed to feel like a natural app on the device. And it's supposed to, like you said, instead of like building like the app specifically like for these different things, you're supposed to be able to like have the website, and then, like you have like this database, whatever, that the website's getting, and the app gets it from the same spot. So you don't have to necessarily rebuild anything. You just, like if you're changing something on the website, you just have to do it once, and it would automatically feed into the progressive web app. So you wouldn't have to necessarily be changing 2 code bases. It all just feeds from the same thing. So it becomes easier to manage on our end too, because you're just changing it in one spot and then it feeds out. So it's supposed to kind of be along those lines as well, which would be really cool too. And as you're kind of building it out, knowing that when you're making changes, you don't necessarily have to do it in all these different places and for all these different browsers. It's just you can do it once, and it's smart enough to make its adjustments.
Yeah. Okay. That reminds me, it's tickling in my brain somewhere, one of those things that I've mostly forgot. Several years ago, it may have been with HTML5, there was a protocol that allowed them to store data on the phone instead of having to go from the phone to the website and then get the data, so that it was starting to allow it to store certain types of data on the phone. So that's what that must be building off of.
Right. And so even like Google was saying, like, you should be able to use our app. So even like Chrome, right? Like they've got like Notes and like all this other stuff you can do stuff on. They want all of those to be moved over to this progressive web app, where like you can be working in their apps and not even have to be online. But then like when you go back online, you can kind of connect and everything gets updated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're making our way through a lot of stuff here. That's good. All right, so tools and integration, and this really is an area that has changed rapidly over the last 5 years especially. So where do you want to go with that?
This one, oh man, could go in a lot of different directions with this, but this, I think the biggest piece is that, instead of us being blind to kind of what's happening on the web, or not really knowing what we need to do next and having to run all these different tests, even see like, what can I possibly do to improve my website here? How do I rank higher? How do I do this? How do I do this? Google's being more transparent with us. And it's not just Google. There's a lot of people out there that are saying like, hey, this is like, it's a matter of fact that this is happening. Even with the load speed times of, more than 3 seconds, we know holistically that 50% of people aren't going to wait that long. So they're trying to give you some things that you can do to improve that. The other thing is, even just with Google Search Console, they give you access to a lot of information, you know, on a website that like you couldn't get anywhere else, and they keep adding, they keep kind of adjusting the Google Analytics and Webmaster Tools to account for, let's give the, you know, the web developers more information to make this better, because Google at the end of the day, they want our websites to be good, they want it to be a good user experience, they want them to land on, you know, websites that are helpful, they don't want it to be where it's, you know, been hacked or all this different stuff. So it's been really cool to see the additional information that we've been getting access to over the years to just help make the experience better for, at the end of the day, it's for the end user.
So if we were to take out our crystal ball and look and see where this is going, do you think that it's getting easier to do this, or do you think that there's so much more that's coming into play that it's actually getting harder to do this?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think if you know enough, like the right tools, because I think if you're just starting in the industry, it's extremely overwhelming, and there are like a million tools out there where you're like, I don't even know where to start, because you don't even know which one is credible and which one's not. I think when you've been in the industry for a little while, it's pretty easy to kind of say like, okay, they're not legit, they're not credible, like we're not using that, and really focus on like the higher credibility tools that are out there that actually give you useful information. So we, you know, and even through this course too, like, you know, heading people in the right direction to say use this tool, or giving them, you know, better advice on the tools that we're giving them, not just saying go out there and search and you'll find a million tools that you can possibly use. It's like we've done that vetting already. So we have a pretty good idea on what's working and what's not, and what we should be using, which is cool. But but usually, I mean, Google has awesome tools that they always, you know, provide with their mobile page speed tests, their load times, their, you know, Google Webmaster Tool stuff, which is now Search Console, their Google Analytics. I mean, even just alone for them, I mean, obviously Google's a very credible company that we can trust and rely on, and so we use a lot of their tools, to be honest. But then there's also really highly credible companies too, like Moz and stuff like that, where we use a lot of their tools, and we know, you know, like Screaming Frog is also a really good tool to use for on-site SEO. GT metrics, like you mentioned as well. So I think if, like I said, I think I would go back to, if, you know, if you're just starting in the industry, I think it can be extremely overwhelming. But I think if you have like a good mentor or a good professor, or somebody that could, you know, get you in the right direction, I think it can be a little bit more controlled, and easier to understand.
Yeah, I agree. The term that they use, or that we use, is the stack. So if somebody asks you what your stack is, what they're talking about is, what are all the different tools that you're using to look at your market, your digital marketing efforts. And excuse me, a few years ago there were very few. It was hard to get any good data, but that meant that there was a vacuum, and nature hates a vacuum. So there were a lot of new tools that were brought in, and I haven't looked recently, but it was predicted that, you know, there was this massive growth in the number of type of tools, but there was a prediction that had peaked, and that people were going to start consolidating the different tools into a stack that were designed to make together. And Google's an excellent example. Is if you used just Google tools, you could do an adequate job with managing certainly the on-site SEO. You were going to say something?
Right. Oh, I was just going to say, no, absolutely. I totally agree with what you said, and especially with like managing some of those on-site pieces. Because obviously if you're doing like, you know, social media advertising on Facebook, like they're going to give you a lot of like really good insight to how things are performing, you know, your weekly insights, here's what they recommend you do based on your budget. But even with Google PPC, they give you a lot of, extremely useful information in there. Even if you have a business local page, they give you a lot of in Google My Business, like that tool itself gives you a lot of like insight to how you can better perform in your local. So depending on kind of what you're doing with your marketing and as a whole, there's a lot of different opportunities there and where you can kind of pick and choose. But for Onsite specifically, even just with the ones that we mentioned, yeah, Google and all those other tools too are extremely helpful.
All right. I think that we will wrap this up now. Thank you very much, Allison. I know that there's supposed to be a big snowstorm in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area right now, so we'll let you go to hopefully get home before it buries you in snow. Thank you very much. We appreciate your knowledge, your experience, the time that you've given us, and always, every time I talk to you guys, I learn something new. And so thank you very much. And I will talk to you the next time. And for those of you that are watching, this is the first. We got 5 or 6 of these Fireside chats that are scheduled to go in the spring of 2018. And if it works out well, then we may be doing this every semester. So we will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.